Hello everybody and welcome to LifeWorks Live. Appreciate you tuning in to our new evening time slot. This is the show where you get to call in, ask the tough questions, and get the real answers. So if you want to call in, we've got the number on the bottom of the screen there, 403-632-4087. And call in anytime during the show and we'll be happy to answer your questions best we can. So let's talk about what's on the show today. We are going to talk a lot more about triggers. And the last show, we talked about triggers briefly because they came up a little bit in the last show. We're going to go a lot more in depth into triggers today. We're also going to go into our conscious toolbox again. We're going to pull out one of the tools that you guys can take home and use in your everyday life. We're also going to talk about a weekly challenge again this week. And weekly challenge is something that we've had to deal with and how we managed it in our own lives during the past week. And Lisa, what else are we doing?
Well, we also have our conscious question of the day. And the conscious question that's coming up that we're going to answer is, we had one of our clients say, my partner always makes me mad and I try to defend myself and we always wind up in a fight. We always end up fighting. How can we stop fighting? So we're going to address that today. And then we're going to answer any calls or questions that come up online for us, or if anybody would like to call in.
Okay, so first of all, we'll jump right into the triggers. So the question is, what is a trigger? So a trigger is really something that sets off a memory, or it's almost like a flashback to a previous time in your life where some event in the past that had some kind of emotional reaction to that, and what happens is that emotional reaction kind of gets re-triggered again. So it's triggering an emotion that's already there, and again from a previous incident or event or some sort of trauma even, and then that can get triggered again just by somebody saying something that reminds you of what happened, or doing something that reminds you of a past event, or anything along that line. So basically so when you get triggered, they call it a trigger because what happens is it triggers an old emotion, or it'll trigger even a behavior of some sort, and it's the way you could possibly react to it. And sometimes it'll even be blame, or you might want to blame the event for your reaction rather than actually owning it or recognizing that it's something from your past.
Okay.
That's how you got triggered.
I'm going to expand on that.
Please do.
Because some examples. Well, there's two different kinds of triggers. Sometimes a trigger is a really good memory and a good thing, and some really good examples of that are like smells or tastes or noises. Like cinnamon buns baking at your grandma's house. That's a great trigger because it evokes a really happy, you're gonna get fed happy, yummy food, so that's a really good trigger. Another happy sound might be kids playing, right? And that might trigger you in a really positive way. And you get it brings you joy, and it evokes a happy emotion. And those are great triggers. However, they don't really serve us except to trigger us into a place of joy and happiness. But what we're really going to talk about today are the negative triggers. A negative trigger is if you're feeling something's happened, an experience, a person, a comment, a place where you feel criticized or blamed, and you instantly have a feeling in your body. So there's going to be feelings of hurt, you're going to feel angry, there might be chest pain, you might even feel nauseous, an instant feeling of panic or fear, you feel insulted, it feels like you got kicked in the stomach, you might even start crying or get the chills, feel disgusted. You might even want to shut down and run. Or you might want to freeze. Or you just, you stop breathing and you feel anxious. So the difference between a positive trigger and a negative one, the negative one is presented in your life so that you can face an issue that's been holding you back. Because the negative trigger is always going to keep repeating for you to learn the lesson there is for you to learn. Some negative triggers that we're going to talk about, just so you can relate to it and understand, and you're probably thinking through your own mind, where am I triggered? The first one jumps into my mind is being asked to say a speech when you're not prepared. Like you're just like, like you go into panic and anxiety right away. Or a baby crying, or your kids are fighting. To dig a little deeper, if there was an alcoholic in your family, the smell of alcohol might trigger you, and it might disgust you and remind you of the negative experiences growing up. Other triggers would be like special holidays, like Christmas time, or your birthday, or Mother's Day. A birthday might be a really positive trigger, so you get excited and you love it, but that's not the case for everyone. Some other triggers that you could all relate to is if somebody's being abused or somebody's being hit, or somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're just like, you're instantly angered and you're feeling really mad. Or loud noises, like a sound of a gun going off. If you come from a culture where there was fighting and war, that might trigger you and panic and put you in a state of panic or fear. Some other triggers that I was talking to people about that they get triggered by an announcement of somebody getting married or divorced, and it just brings up regret or pain or things that happened to them in the past, and then it's just a reminder. It takes you back to that situation. So then what happens is you get an opportunity to face that trigger in your life, find out where it comes from, and actually move through it. Because a negative trigger holds us back and creates parts of our life that we get stuck in and we have a hard time moving forward.
Well, I think it's also important to recognize, and like you're saying, there's some things that, like a negative trigger for you may not be a negative trigger for somebody else. So something as simple, like a good example would be like hearing a dog barking. Somebody hears a dog barking, and that might be a positive response for them because it reminds them of a dog they had and how much they love that dog and how much they're, or how much they love the dog that they have now or whatever. But if you were bitten by a dog when you were a child, that same barking might be a thing where you're like, oh, I don't really like dogs, or dogs.
It triggers you.
Triggers me, exactly. So you get a negative trigger from that, where somebody else will get a positive trigger from the exact same sound or the exact same event, right? And then also, like you pointed out, very important, how often these triggers, it's not only just an emotional reaction, but you might feel it in your body somewhere, and recognizing whether you feel it in your chest, or you feel it in your throat, or you feel it in your stomach, or just how your body reacts to triggers too, because that's one way of, again, recognizing how these, when the triggers come up, it's a good way to recognize them, even just by that physical response, not just the emotional response. Okay, so let's look at how we do respond to triggers. So there's the three common ways that people often react to triggers, or is basically just having this immediate reaction. It's like it's a visceral reaction or an immediate emotional response to somebody, whether it's anger or sadness or a reactive behavior, which could be just withdraw, or something gets said and you leave the room and slam the door. So it could be a behavioral thing. Then there's also repressing. That's where you actually will basically kind of shut down, or you don't say anything. And so here you've got a repressed emotion. That emotion gets triggered, and then you just push it back down again and repress it one more time. And so you stuff those feelings, and it's really like a conflict avoidance strategy in a lot of cases, because especially if it's a trigger that's come up in the past, you might think, you know what, I'm triggered again, but I don't want to go through the conversation or the fight or the argument or whatever that may have caused in the past. The other thing you can do is actually project those feelings on the person. So that's kind of like the blame game, right? It's like, you made me feel that way, so you did that and you made me feel this way. Or it's your fault I ate a whole liter of ice cream in response to what you said or what you did, right? You went out drinking with the boys, so I ate a liter of ice cream.
You made me mad.
Yeah.
So. Or you made me feel lonely.
Or you say, you have to stop doing that, because when you do that, I feel that makes me feel this way, or it makes me do something that I don't want to do. Yet you recognize that there's a lot of things that come up, and you should be able to have like if it's a conversation around family or money or kids, wherever those triggers are. But some of those things are important to be talked about, right? So you've got to try not to be triggered by these important things that need to be said or discussed, and not to have things that are like, no, we can't talk about this because it always causes a problem. It's better to try and work through these problems. So again, the projection is really not owning your own emotion. You're not recognizing that it's actually your own emotion. You're not owning it. You're trying to say, you made me feel that way. So again, you're blaming that event, or blaming it on the event, or blaming the person for triggering that in you.
Right, or the experience.
Yeah, yeah. So have you got some examples?
Yeah, so we're going to go right to our conscious toolbox, because we're going to talk about how we can respond to triggers in a healthy and responsible way so that we can get through them. Because so often, like our conscious question is, if you're trying to have a conversation with your partner, and now you made me mad, and we always get into a fight, and I mean, that happens to all of us. Like, so how do we get through that? And how do we get through it in a healthy way so that we don't end up in a fight, shut down, walk out, whatever we do in response to a fight? So we're going to dig right into our conscious toolbox on learning how to respond to a trigger. So what we're going to teach is, this is a tool, so listen up, because this really, really helps. It's a stop, drop, and breathe method. So the first thing that we're doing is just to stop and recognize and go, oh, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling triggered. I feel anxious or fearful or hurt or blamed or criticized. I'm going to stop.
Or the sensation in my body, or whatever it is.
I'm sweating. I'm feeling it.
Nauseous.
Yeah. Right? Or you're like holding your breath, like you're freezing.
Very commonly.
Yeah. Especially when there's fear. So stop. Stop what you're doing and try to slow down your reaction and just start to observe your body. So drop into your heart, because we react from our head. So a lot of the reaction that we have is coming from our mind and our head and our thoughts of, I'm being attacked or I'm being hurt. But it's really coming from the trigger. So drop into your heart, and if you're willing to start dropping the story around it, like, oh, you're attacking me again, this always happens, or he never does that, or whatever is going through your mind, is just to start slowing it down. And one way to drop from your head to your heart is to do a 5 countdown. Like, I'm in my head and I'm going to react, and this is not going well, so I'm going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, I'm in my heart. I'm going to lean into a healthier place, and I'm going to use my heart and lead with love here. So take a deep breath. That's stop, drop, and breathe. Go down into your heart, take some deep breaths, and start to become a little more mindful and try and get out of the reaction. So, and then once you've taken a deep breath, you can start to ask yourself, wow, I'm triggered here. And I'm willing to get curious about where it's coming from. And understand, in any situation that you're triggered, you're only responsible for yourself. That's all you can do. I can't influence my partner or my boss or the guy on the street to do anything. I can only be responsible for myself. It's all about me. And I'm going to add here, I can just hear everybody going, what? No way. No, it's not. How come it's not about my demanding boss, or my girlfriend who's nagging me, or my partner who's being a jerk? Like, how can this be about me? And the thing is, all you can do is now learn how to respond to it. That's all you can be responsible for.
Yeah, and with practice, I mean, it's so usually their first response that you might have an emotional response first, or you might blame initially, but if you can, even if you don't be able to stop immediately, if you can maybe say your piece or say something and then say, okay, now I'm going to stop, recognize that I was triggered, because you might not catch yourself right at the start.
Right.
So hopefully before you trigger the other person and they it starts getting logged back and forth, you can stop as soon as you can. Even to the point where what we like to do is, instead of like the initial response might be to blame somebody, and we actually immediately go to thank you. I recognize I'm triggered, and so we kind of just say to each other, thank you, you triggered me. That means I've got something that I've got access to now that I can actually see where work on it and do some work around it. So that can be a big, that takes a lot of practice to get from blaming to saying thank you for triggering me. But recognize that that's part of that dropping down and taking the time is to actually, that's almost like one of the goals, is to go from to that place of saying thank you for triggering me. Now I got something to work on.
Oh, exactly.
Some awareness for myself.
And a part of the work that we do is when people come to us and they're tired of the struggle and they want to do life differently, is to teach them a growth mindset. A growth mindset where they're starting to say, I'm willing to look at my life differently. I'm willing to look at how I can change. And so if you have a growth mindset when you're triggered, your goal is to go from that reactionary place of feeling fearful and mad and you want to lash out and attack to a place where you're learning to respond.
And changing your mindset from, instead of saying, how can I avoid getting triggered, to, hey, when I get triggered, those are these little gems, right? They're the gems where it gives you some direction on where you've got a little bit, some little bit of growth work to do.
In fact, I think that's the biggest lesson around triggers, is our goal in life is not to just live in a bubble and not let life trigger us. It's actually the opposite, is allowing those triggers, like Don said, to show us it is now the pathway to my opportunity to be a better person and to handle myself with a growth mindset and figure out what's in my life that's holding me back so that I can manage my triggers. And we're going to talk about this going forward, is what do we do when we're triggered? And now that we know what to do to recognize it, we got to move past to, because you don't want to live your whole life being triggered by every single thing, because that's no way to live, because then you're always in the struggle. All right, so this is one really big piece right here too, and jump in if you want to add to it.
Yep.
Because it happens all the time, and it's a bit of a danger zone for couples. So I really want to share how this gets tricky if you're not really committed to good communication. So now we've taught you do the stop, drop, and breathe. You recognize you're being triggered. You don't want to react, and it's okay in a partnership to say, I know I'm triggered here, and I want to get curious about it, and I want to know, but I need some time to think about it, because the answers aren't going to come to you right away. Like, it's just until you get really good at it and you've spent a lot of time practicing it, and we've done it for years. Like, so we're really good at it to where we're at the place of, I can say, oh, well, thank you, because I was triggered there. Now I realize there's something for me to look in the mirror at and see where I can grow. So we have a communication rule that we teach a lot of people is, sure, you can take some time. Absolutely. You might even say, I need to sleep on this. And this has happened in our life where Don's had to say, yeah, I see it, but I need some time. The danger zone is when you don't get back to it. And this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that couples make, or even in corporate world too, is not having a time that you're going to set to revisit it. And even if it's the next morning or the next day at work, saying, are you ready to talk about the issue that we had yesterday? And if the person says, you know what, I need some more time, it's just, the more time you delay, it's just really an avoidance, a way of avoiding actually looking at what's going on. So if you're willing to look at that it doesn't serve you unless you're just needing the time to actually get grounded and see what it really is.
And you might have to check in too and say, are you avoiding actually owning it yourself, as and not rather than saying, oh, I'm going to revisit this so I can prove that I was right and you were wrong. But we are back on air again, so we'll kind of try and start where we left off. Where are we at, Lisa?
Okay, well, we were talking about having a growth mindset and moving from reacting to responding. And okay, we were at this spot, and this is a great spot, and I'm glad we have this opportunity to say it again. Because when couples are triggered or something happens at work and you both stop and realize you are triggered, is asking for some time to think about it and to reflect and figure out where it comes from in your life. What happens that causes a big issue is not getting back to it. And then particularly in partnerships, because a lot of people say, then we walk around on eggshells in our house for the next few days. And then you just kind of start to warm up. And then you think, well, do we really want to bring this issue up again? Because we might start fighting. And why don't we just, like, sweep it under the rug?
And hope it doesn't ever happen again, right?
Yeah, but you know it will.
You know it
right?
will. Exactly.
Because when you do that, it's guaranteed to come back because you haven't dealt with it. It's just bubbled to the surface for you to look at it, and if you sweep it back under the rug, then you're going to trip over the rug, and there it is again. And it'll be multiplied, and more emotions are repressed, and it's going to actually come up again with a vengeance. But really what happens, most of the couples, they're just so afraid to open the issue up again, is because they really don't know what to do. right? They're just afraid, right? Because they just like, if all we're going to do is fight, I'd rather just forget about it.
Keep the peace for now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because often people don't have enough skills to communicate, and it's a trap we get into is we never resolve anything. And then, like, we have lots of people that say that nothing gets resolved. The same fight happens over and over. And then a wedge gets built between the two of them. It just gets wedged in, and you start building walls up to protect yourself. And in a few years, the wall is so big and so wide that you don't even know why you're in the partnership anymore. So,
or you're walking on eggshells because you're always thinking, I gotta be careful that I don't trigger my partner, and your partner's saying, I gotta be careful that I don't trigger you, and so now you're like always double checking on what can I say, what can I do, so that I don't get a negative reaction or end up triggering my partner.
And if I might add, that's no way to live. That's not living. It's not thriving and enjoying your life. It's absolute survival. Because if we believe that our relationship is just to, well, I'm going to present myself in a way that doesn't make you mad, then we have a partnership. It's based on everything false. Because the purpose of our relationship, the purpose of an experience, the purpose of everything we experience in our life is for us to learn something about ourselves and face the issues that come up in those experiences to grow. They're there for our growth.
And if we recognize that unless we had a past, our entire childhood and our whole past life has not had any disappointment or sadness or heartbreak
or trauma
of any sort, then
or
you'd
any
say,
pain.
well, then I probably won't get triggered. But the fact is, we've all suffered disappointment and heartbreak and traumas and all these different emotional things in the past. And so if we haven't dealt with them fully then, they're going to show up as triggers in our life now.
Right. So we're going to go to the conscious question again.
So the conscious question, we'll kind of word it this way. So if I'm triggered by my partner and she makes me mad, isn't this her fault? That's often the question you will often get, because there's always this place of blame is often the first place you want to go. They keep saying, like, so she is making me mad, so isn't it about her? And does she deserve this, right? And do I deserve to be made mad? And do you deserve to be blamed for it? And so, and then the second part of that question is a trigger always going to be a trigger? So whatever you've done that made me mad, do we just have to accept that if you do that, I'm going to get mad, and that's the way it's going to be?
Or
right?
If you just say, stop doing that.
Yeah. Can you stop doing that, and then I may not ever get mad again?
That's not reality.
That's not, exactly.
That's living in a dream.
And it's walking on eggshells again.
Yeah.
It's just one more step of walking on eggshells.
And if I can add here, when a relationship is new and you're in the romantic phase, you don't make each other mad the same way, because you are in that romantic phase where you're doing your best, you're showing up the best you know how to do. Yeah, you're presenting all the good qualities that you have. You're being kinder and more generous and all the things that you want to do to attract your partner. And once you actually get a little more committed in the relationship, and even say you start dating and you're more committed, your triggers are going to come up. And that's what they're there for, that partnership. Like we said, thank you.
The level of trust, the level of safety has to get to a point where some of your emotions can come to the surface, and then that's where the triggers start showing up.
And that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's the way relationships can progress and can blossom. But unfortunately, a lot of times they progress to that point, and then they start deteriorating when it's actually every one of those places that it starts to deteriorate, there's also the opportunity for it to grow into a better partnership and do emotional healing for both of you.
And I think we say this all the time to our clients is everything's going really well, and then they have a conflict. We're just like, great, because now you know that person's provided you with enough love and safety and understanding to go to the next level of your relationship.
And commitment too, because those things don't come up unless you're feel that you're not going to scare the person away unconsciously. Right?
Right. Yeah, it's unconscious.
Yeah. Okay, so well, one thing to do with these triggers too is so when you say I'm triggered by a partner who makes me mad, so the thing to do is then say, okay, the emotion I'm feeling is mad, angry. So then you have to think of yourself, okay, where's my first memory of getting really angry, or my first or having a similar situation that would have angered me, and you might go back into childhood somewhere. You might find it in a previous relationship, or if it's at work, it might be in a previous job situation, and then you recognize, oh gee, that happened in that job, and so I left that job and thought I'd come to this great job, and now look at it, I'm getting triggered by the same thing again. Or past relationship, and you thought, well, that wasn't working out because of all what was going on there, and I was getting triggered and I was getting mad, and so I left that relationship, and I'm in a new relationship. It was great for a number of months, and then now here I am getting triggered by that again. So then again, that's always pointing back to you. Hey, if I would have dealt with that, or if I deal with that now, I'm not going to have it happen in the future.
And what I hear you say all the time is, in every conflict that you have or relationship that wasn't successful, you had to at one point stop and say, I'm the common denominator, right? Like, I'm the one who's always in these conflicts. So it's now my opportunity to look at myself and see how I am contributing to it, and how I can take responsibility for it, and have an open conversation with my partner so we can both unpack it and have a good look at it.
That's a big part of that growth mindset, is that part where you recognize I am the common denominator in what's going on in my life, and the triggers I've had, and the past disappointments or failures around, whether it's again relationships or work-related things, whatever it would be. So then, to answer the question, is a trigger always going to be a trigger? Well, until you go back and find where that emotion was originally stuffed, and you might have to go back through a few different layers, or there might be different times in your life that things repeated, and it's going back and finding those feelings, and recognize where they came from, feeling those feelings fully. And again, this is the type of work we do when we're coaching people, and that's very helpful to have coaching initially until you learn how to do it yourself. But and then once you've basically healed where that emotional trigger has come from that past trauma or whatever it was, the past situation, then that trigger will no longer be a trigger. You'll look at that and think, wow, that was a place of growth for me rather than a trigger. And you also bring, if your partner supported you through that, that's also a place where you grew together, and it was something. Now it's a shared piece again that brings you closer together.
And I'm going to share, and this is a part of our weekly challenge, and a perfect example of how this played out in our life. And my trigger, I'm going to say right up front, was Mother's Day. It's never been... It's been a struggle my whole life, because my parents were divorced when I was about 5. My dad had custody of me and my 2 brothers, and we moved from our family home in Victoria, BC to Alberta. And my mom was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, spent lots of time in the psych ward. I didn't see her again until I was about 13. So, my parents were not open and honest about what was going on. So what was happening to me was I was really in the dark. I was confused. I didn't know the truth about anything. And there was a lot of sadness and pain about leaving the family and the house that I knew and moving to a different province. And then what came up for me right before Mother's Day, I was triggered. I was triggered, and what the feeling came up for me is just a very, like, an almost nauseous unsettling in my stomach, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel right. I feel off. I feel unsettled. I feel confused. And sometimes you're really not 100% sure where it's coming from, but because I'm completely aware and open, I really ask myself, wow, where is this all coming from? And then I realize I had so many repressed emotions and repressed tears and fears and confusion as a little girl. It was coming up. It was coming up for me to face. So that trigger showed me the places in me that were still a sad little girl who, to be matter of fact about it, who made Mother's Day gifts at school and had no mother to give them to. So there was this sort of sad little girl inside of me that said, I need to feel this sadness and this unsettled piece is up. And again, I'm thankful for an amazing partner that I can come home to and say, I'm triggered and I have a whole bunch of sadness to feel, and would you support me through it? And so then I can talk to Dawn about it and say, I remember so many Mother's Days that I didn't want anybody in the class to know that I didn't have a mom to take this Mother's Day homemade card to. And so then I had to find a way to get rid of it, just so I didn't have to see it and I didn't have to stay in that pain. So, when I got home, I had to really stop and go, okay, what is this? And drop into my heart and go, all right, what's the truth here, and what are the true emotions that I'm feeling? And take some deep breaths, and then how did I get through it? I had to feel it all. And I had to tell Dawn out loud and say, I know what it is. It's this sad little girl inside me that's still feeling the pain over Mother's Day. And so I'm very lucky, Then literally Dawn can hold me while I cry like a little girl. And I know this sounds really simple, but it's the repressed emotion that was coming up for me that I needed to let go of. And literally, I'm in my 50s, so I hang on to that for 45 or more years. So that's a lot of years where I'm trying to hold it in. And if I might add, I use a lot of my life energy to hold that down. Don't feel it, right? Don't feel it, because my ego's going, don't feel that. That's going to hurt. And you're going to be sad, and there's going to be emotion there, and you might even feel angry, and you might feel like you need to cry or even yell or whatever. And so if I listen to my ego, I'm not going to feel it, and I'm just going to push it down harder. And the more I do that, the more of my life energy gets taken up by holding that in. So I'm so grateful to my partner that he's...
Well, and as the person who was supporting, for me, it's, knowing her history and that, it's easy for me to recognize that Mother's Day could very well not only be, it can also be a beautiful time to share and to, celebrate your mother, being a mother yourself, but also recognize that there's very well could bring up childhood pain from your own mother and the situations you had. So for me to know your history, that you've been open about your history and all that, I can be empathetic towards that, and then it's just a matter of me not taking any of it personally and not knowing that it's not about me in any way, so I can just stay calm and stay grounded and just be supportive. And if she needs to be held, I can hold her. If she just wants me with her in the room, if she actually wants to be left alone, I can leave her alone and not feel like I have to hover over her. And once I know how she wants me to support her, then you just provide that, and knowing that it's, because we've been through this before many times. I know that it's not going to last long, so it's it lasts as long as it needs to, but I know it's not going to be like a whole day affair of crying and sobbing and just having this whole day ruined. It's it may be a matter of 5 or 10 or 15 minutes usually at the most, and then by then you felt your feelings, and we've talked about it, and I know exactly where you're at, and then you're ready to move forward with your day, and you're grateful that you got to release that piece.
Well, and what I really appreciated, and what makes the life coaching business so amazing, is we can, when I came home, you just said, what do you need? What did that little girl need? That I can provide you right now that I didn't have when I was 5 or 6 or 8. And so then I can really tune into her and go, this is what she needs. She needs to release some tears and some sadness and some pain. So,
and even part of you needed to know the truth. It wouldn't have been nice if your dad could have just held you and told you the truth.
Yeah.
And so you were discovering the truth yourself by going back and reliving those memories and kind of the truth of that situation that you're aware of now. and then allowing me to just hold you like your dad could have, and just, said you're going to be okay.
Right.
Right.
Or for my dad to say, and this is what we teach in our conscious parenting course, is being empathetic, going, yeah, you do miss your mama.
And I understand.
And I understand. Right. And I understand that you're sad. And I understand that there's tears and there's fears and there's pain, and just let me love you through it. So that was my goal. That's what I wanted as a little girl. But
And
I
the
had
other
to wait
thing-
till I was in my 50s to feel it.
Exactly. And the other part about supporting too is not to make it like, let's see how quickly we can stop you from being sad, which is often how we parent
Right.
children too. If somebody's sad, we're like, how soon can we get you to stop crying? It's like, no, feel your feelings completely, and then it'll be over. And if there's no resistance to that, the quicker it happens.
Right, because, I'm guilty of it. I was not of a growth mindset raising my children. I'd say, oh, come on now, stop that crying, that's enough,
Yeah.
you're okay, everything's going to be fine, it's not that big of a deal, right? And that's where you learn to repress.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what, I can't feel this? Okay, then I'm going to have to put it, stuff it somewhere and hold it in my body, right, until I can feel it.
Yeah. I think it's also important to recognize that, again, the fact we've been doing this work for years, and you've done work around your childhood and your mom many, many times. You've done many, many layers of that kind of work. And, a lot of people will think, oh, I've dealt with my mom. But you have to recognize, or you've dealt with my dad, or I've dealt with something in your childhood. Recognize there's other layers that can show up over and over and over again, and you never know when it's going to be done. It may never be done.
Yeah, that's
you might
right.
just continue to access more layers and more instant events from your childhood. They just keep coming.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that by saying that's where our coaching sessions are great, is because what we can do for couples or people, individuals, families, anyone, is to get them to access those triggers in their life, so that, and then basically we get them, write down what happened, write down what you were feeling, how your partner reacted, or what happened at work, all the details of it, bring it in and have a session with us, and we can actually access a lot of repressed emotion that needs to come up to be felt and released.
Yeah, and the focus comes off that event or that conflict or whatever it was, and the focus comes back on the emotions and where these emotions repressed previously, and we're in our childhood or in previous relationships we've got some work to do.
And I might add to that is the trigger for me was Mother's Day, but then you're watching Facebook and all your friends with little ones, and there's all these little pictures of homemade cards and little cute crafts that little ones made for their moms, and I didn't think that would be a trigger for me, but it was, and I'm grateful. It's the same thing, like you said. It's a gift. That opportunity was a gift for me.
Yeah, and you also could have just said, I'm not going to let that trigger me, and you could have just pushed that back down and carried on with the Mother's Day weekend, right? But you didn't. You thought, what, it's there, I'm going to feel it, and then by the time Mother's Day rolled around, you were feeling great.
Yeah, I was able to release it. So what we share with a lot of people is you never know what your trigger's going to be. It's because everybody has a different experience in this life. So you never know what's going to come up. Mine was homemade cards, right?
Yeah.
That weren't even something I even saw. I just saw on Facebook, and then I'm like, oh, it's just an unsettled feeling for me.
Yeah. Now, some of our triggers we do know because we've had them repeatedly, and we never deal with them, but recognize that if you do start dealing with your triggers and actually going back and healing the emotions around them and releasing the emotions around them, and when you get rid of one trigger, often that will just give you access to another trigger, which is, again, you're thinking, oh, why would I want another, why would I not want to just get rid of all these triggers? The fact is, when you heal one, it just allows another layer to come up. So something else will trigger another layer, and it's just another opportunity to heal. And again, that's that growth mindset, saying that I'm willing to to get triggered and willing to work on the next layer that's available for healing.
And I'm going to add to that again, and I might say this every single show because I find it so important for our personal growth, is because it's kind of a philosophy that I hear all the time is, you know, if someone doesn't make you happy, you just walk away. They're labeled toxic and they're not welcome in your life. And I mean,
or somebody that repeatedly triggers you, you might say, you know what?
I'm just got to get this person out of my life, right?
Yeah.
However, and this is a part of our philosophy, and we know it to be true because we've worked with so many people, is until you've learned the lesson from that person, that experience, or that trigger, or anything that's happened to you, you don't push that away and walk away until you've learned everything you need to learn and healed everything you need to heal.
And that means owning every part that's your part, where you're the common denominator in what's been going on.
Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen. It's going to come back.
You'll find somebody else
to show you the same thing.
Will appear in your life, and they'll show you the same lessons to be learned.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get a year or two off, you know, as you go from one person to the next, but it's gonna it'll come back.
Right. And I'm going to talk about, you know, one important thing to know about your partner, and it's because we have a workshop coming up about the 5 love languages. It's coming up on May 23rd. However, knowing the love language, you know, learning what your love language is in a partnership, or learning the personality style, because that's something else we work on in our coaching practice, is understanding what your personality style, your love language is. And once I know that, I know exactly, I can know what your personality is going to do, and my personality, what I'm going to do in any situation. We talked about it in our last show about packing the truck up, right, and how we do that differently.
Yeah, and it's all about awareness, and just having more awareness about your partner and about yourself just makes it so much easier to communicate and to be supportive, and again, less likely to get triggered because now your expectations are different of this person. You're not expecting them to be the same as you. You're expecting them to be them, and then so once you know, again, how they like to be shown affection, how they like to give and receive affection, or I guess love, like the love languages, and and personality types. You know, what's your personality type? What are your core values around relationship and around the different parts of life?
Exactly, and that could be around everything. Like what do you like to do on a Saturday night? What kind of music do you like to listen to? Or it might be, how do you recharge your battery, right? If, you know, you need to have a bath and read a book and be alone, or would you rather go out to a pub and invite your friends and go dancing? Like, each person, as soon as they understand that's what one of their core needs is, then it's all understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It goes from judgment to understanding.
Exactly.
So that's the gift of awareness. And so lots of things we can do around awareness when it comes to working with your partner.
Absolutely. So we're just going to talk about a little bit about our work and where to find us.
Yeah, so LifeWorksInternational.ca is our website. We have a holistic clinic here in Lethbridge, Alberta called LifeWorks International. On Facebook, we're LifeWorks International. Instagram, LifeWorks International YQL. And our email is info@lifeworksinternational.ca.
Great.
And like Lisa said, our next workshop coming up, it's here in Lethbridge, Thursday, May 23rd from 6:15 to 9. And it's on the 5 love languages explained. So it's a Conscious Quest event, and so you can save your seat if you Google Conscious Partner Lethbridge. It'll take you to the meetup page, and you can sign up for the meetup page, and I think you can register right there. You can also just get the information there, and you can show up at the door and pay your $15 and join us
at Hudson's
Pub on Thursday, May 23rd at 6:15. So again, very fun and interactive way to learn about 5 love languages. It's not like lecture style like we're doing here in our show. It's you get in little small groups and you do little fun exercises, and so anyways, that's just a fun way to learn and interact with, and you kind of get mixed up as you get to work with different people in the room, and yeah, it's just a great way to learn, a great way to meet people.
It's a lot of fun.
It's great for singles, it's great for couples, it's great if you're in the dating scene, or if you're maybe online dating like a lot of people are these days, and you're going to meet some new people, do some networking, or even if you're dating, it's a great place to bring a date and just see how they respond and react to situations and social situations.
Well, and we know quite a few couples that they'll come to one of the events and like even the love languages, because in this you will find out what your love language is, and same with your partner. So it'll really open that door for a new level of conversation for your relationship. And that's always exciting, because you don't always know how to do that on your own. Like, how do you open that door?
Yeah.
Right?
And if you don't already know it, I mean, you'll again, more awareness about yourself, and it'll be more awareness about your partner if your partner's there. Also, we have Wellness Wednesdays, and so tomorrow we're having a hosted by Kathy Teasters Atwood, and she does Thrive Life Freeze Dried Foods. Thrive Life Freeze Dried Foods.
That's a mouthful.
So, yeah. So we just got introduced to these, and we think they're pretty cool stuff. And so she's going to be talking about that, and we'll be making veggie rice bowls with your choice of protein. So our Wellness Wednesdays are free classes every Wednesday at our clinic, LifeWorks International, here in Lethbridge. And so you can find that on our website?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay.
All right.
All right, so that's coming up tomorrow, the Wellness Wednesday with the Thrive Life Freeze-Dried Foods. And then on the 23rd is the 5 love languages at Hudson's.
Great. So we're just going to wrap it up with, who we are. We're internationally licensed life coaches and workshop instructors. And our work is really for singles. It's for couples, families, corporate world. We do events. We just help you to get more successful in your personal and professional life, so that you can have more balance and a centered life in your body, mind, and your soul. So people really hire us when they're just tired of this struggle and they're ready to start making the changes that and find out what holds them back to create a life they desire and a life they deserve. Employers hire us when they want result-based professional development programs for their corporate culture. Everybody's looking for leadership skills and ways to improve communication and compassion and understanding in the workplace, in the management team. And if you have triggers that are affecting your relationships, in your family, at work, just reach out to us. Our first coaching session is always free.
Great. Okay, always remember, once you become fearless, life becomes limitless.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.